What if I told you carnivore isn't about restriction? It's about freedom. Freedom from pain, freedom from inflammation, freedom from symptoms, freedom from cravings, freedom from the doctor's office and medications, freedom to choose how you're going to feel every single day. Guys, that's what happened to me, and I didn't expect a lot of these freedoms. So I'm going to take this time to go through a whole list of freedoms that I've encountered since adopting this diet. But before I do so, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, my backstory, and why I even started carnivore to begin with. Okay, first of all, I'm Jason Barrett. I'm a pharmacist. I consider myself the carnivore pharmacist. And that's very important because you got to understand this diet sounded like the most preposterous, crazy diet I've ever heard. As soon as I heard what it was, years before I ever tried it, I'm thinking there's no fiber. It's all red meat, or it's, primarily red meat and saturated fat. I'm going to have clogged arteries. I'm going to have gout. I'm going to have kidney failure. My heart's going to explode. I'm going to be constipated from the lack of fiber. The list goes on. There's a million reasons to just not even try it. I mean, they were mostly based in fear from what I had learned and what I had heard and everything. Now, I just thought in moderation, it's okay, but how could that be the only thing you ate? But what happened to me was I got really sick. After I became a pharmacist, I started getting these weird symptoms, and I eventually go to the doctor after I couldn't get relief on my own, and essentially got passed along through a whole bunch of different specialists and ended up with a rheumatologist. They finally, after probably more than a year, they labeled me with multiple diagnoses of autoimmune, chronic inflammatory conditions. I'll name a few: ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis. If you have that, or if you know anybody who does, you know how debilitating these diseases can be. You know that they are incurable, and essentially what they try to do is just treat the symptoms. That's a key phrase I just said there. They treat the symptoms. I didn't realize that that's really not the best approach until years later, when I'm thinking, why are we not trying to get to the cause of this whole thing and put out this chronic inflammation, put out this fire, that's burning somewhere? But, I trusted the medicine. I learned the medicine. I fully believed it would work. I honestly believed every time we switched to a new medicine, I was like, this one's going to be the one. This one's going to be the one. I took it religiously. I was the most compliant patient you ever saw. Eventually, 6 or 7 years later, I got sick enough that I demanded I said, please refer me to the Mayo Clinic. I've got to get some answers. I'm getting sicker. This stuff is not working. And so they did. I go up there, and it really wasn't much different at all. They didn't change the diagnosis. I came back on some just more powerful versions of these anti-inflammatory medications, actually very powerful versions. These were your biologics like Imbrel and Humira, and there's a whole bunch of them. Essentially, they turn the volume of your entire immune system down. Now, they do work for a little while. Temporarily, they'll give you a little bit of temporary relief. They don't work long term. I didn't really realize that until I was the patient taking them, and they weren't working after a few months. And essentially, I continued to get worse and worse until finally I was told I may not be around much longer. Essentially, I was getting to the point where it was causing some very serious erosion in some of the vertebra on my spine, way up at C1 and 2, right here where your spine connects to the back of your skull. And they said, listen, if this continues, you're going to fracture there. And let's just put it this way. It affects everything below that fracture. C3 controls your respiration. Basically told me I could die. And I'm like mid 30s at this point. I've got 3 young kids at home. I have, I'm the provider for my family. I am completely scared for my life. I got extremely desperate. And when I say I was extremely desperate at this point, I would have tried any diet on the planet. In fact, I did. I tried dozens. If you would have told me to stand on my head and drink vinegar through my nose 3 times a day, I would have done that with a smile on my face. So carnivore, when someone said, when one of my colleagues mentioned that they've heard some really crazy stuff about this and that it's helped people with my symptoms, I'm thinking, are you serious? How could that do that? But I didn't know much about the diet at the time. Now, after I heard that, I was intrigued enough that I went and did some research. I read a book called Carnivore Diet written by Dr. Sean Baker. It's a great book, by the way, especially if you're thinking about diving into this diet. I recommend picking it up because it really just lays it all out and explains why it works. So anyway, the reason why it works is because it gives your body basically a premium source of fuel. You're getting all the calories you need, you're getting all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, you're getting all your essential amino acids and proteins, you're getting all your essential omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, and as well as some other fats and nothing else. You're getting only what you need. And so it's essentially an elimination diet. It's getting rid of anything that could be problematic, even if it wasn't problematic for the first 3 decades of your life, like it was for me. I didn't realize that what I was eating was actually feeding the fire. I needed to remove it so that the flames could go down. So I decided to try this diet for 30 days. I could not believe the results I had within just 10 days. I felt the inflammation going down in a more powerful way than any medication they had me on over that decade plus of going to these doctors and basically taking the whole pharmacy for inflammation. So that's what happened with me. And then anyway, I got to the end of the first 30 days. I told my wife, I said, there's no way I'm stopping this diet. I feel so good. All of my symptoms are reversing. I had symptoms head to toe, and all of my symptoms are reversing. My neck pain was going away. It was like a miracle. I mean, I can't even make this up. This is why I can't shut up about this, because I was 100% sure it was not going to work till it did. So anyway, guys, let me go through a short list of the freedoms that it's given me so that this will just put a little bit of context into how it's changed my life and why I'm not willing to give these freedoms up now, because I didn't even realize I had lost them. So, first and foremost, it teaches you the difference between hunger and cravings. That's a very distinct difference. Hunger is something that, let's say you're doing something important and you get hungry. You can go, okay, you know what? I'll eat in 30 minutes to an hour, but I'm going to finish what I'm doing first, and then I'll go get some food. Cravings are way, 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 in my opinion, way more powerful, especially if you're driven by cravings, and whatever sounds good at the moment is where you go. And that used to be me. If a donut sounded good, if McDonald's sounded good, if a Dr. Pepper sounded good, if pizza, ice cream, you name it, all these wonderful tasting foods that we have in America, if those are driving you, then guess what? Just on a whim, you're going to get a craving, and you're going to stop what you're doing. You're going to get in your car. You're going to drive 10 miles across town or whatever to satisfy this craving. And you're satisfied until the next craving shows up. Whereas hunger, you're more in control. You're usually going to make a more conscious decision about the quality of the food going in your mouth, and you're going to make more healthful options. So it gives you freedom from the cravings. You don't have cravings anymore. It's a very satiating diet. When you eat it, you get full, you stay full, you have energy, you don't have the midday crash, that slump around 2 o'clock after you eat lunch. You don't have that because there's no sugar, there's no carbs. You don't have the glucose spike, you don't have the insulin. You're not dealing with that roller coaster. And so that's the first freedom that I experienced. The second, obviously, symptoms. I mean, I had pain, I had inflammation, I had psoriatic lesions, I had TMJ, I had cervical pain, I had uh, I, rheumatoid swelling at multiple joints on multiple fingers and my thumbs. I had GI problems. I was inflamed and just swollen. I was chronically fatigued. I was irritable. I slept like crap. I had bilateral ankle swelling, multiple places on my spine, had massive inflammation, including at the SI or sacroiliac joint, which is right where your pelvis is. And it was literally head to toe. It was systemic, and it was systemic, so it was affecting my whole body. I got freedom from that, and let me tell you, you can't put a price tag on that. You literally can't. I mean, it's insane, especially if you've been debilitated with it and it shows up, and you cannot get it to go away. You can't. You think you're doing everything right, but it won't go away. Carnivore did that for me. Third, the chronic health problems. Like I said, you got, and it's not just chronic health problems, but you've got this just constant worry in the back of your head that it's just going to get worse. And then it usually does, or either that or it doesn't get worse, but a new symptom shows up. And you're like, are you freaking kidding me? Like these first 10 symptoms aren't enough. We got to have an 11th. We got to have a 12th. This isn't fair. I'm trying everything. I'm doing what the doctor's saying. I'm eating these healthy diets and I'm working out and I'm trying to do everything right. And I'm only getting worse. There's nothing more frustrating. So getting freedom from those chronic health problems, especially if it's autoimmune, if there's any sort of gut involvement, and a lot of times with autoimmune, whether you know it or not, there is a gut issue. Sometimes it's leaky gut, sometimes it's irritable bowel syndrome, sometimes it could be colitis. There's a whole bunch. I mean, I'm not going to name them all, but and it could just be a food sensitivity thing. Your gut could be working fine, but you're just sensitive to certain foods. And as soon as your immune system sees that food, it just goes crazy. And then it's like a bomb goes off inside your body. The next freedom is freedom from doctor visits and medications. Those are not only time consuming, but they cost money. You got copays. You got to go to the pharmacy usually. You got to go do lab work afterwards. You got to go to the pharmacy and pick up these prescriptions, on a regular basis. And let me just say, I'm going to take a minute right here just to hone in on medications, just because, again, I've been a pharmacist for over 16 years, and there's a certain class of medications that I am fond of, and they do work, and I'm not picking on those. If it's something that is root causal and is curative, then those are medications I can stand behind, and those work. There are certain medications that you just absolutely have to have, so I'm not saying all medications are not the best option. Like for instance, if you only have to do one round or maybe a couple of rounds of a medication, let's take for instance an infection. You take an antibiotic, it treats the infection, it helps your immune system to eliminate that infection. You get over it. You don't have to keep taking that infection for the rest of your life. But go compare that to the vast majority of medications on the market. You get on them, and the doctor tells you, well, you're probably gonna be on this for the rest of your life. And you're like, okay. And so you go start taking it. And then all of a sudden, either it's got a side effect or it leads to some sort of a deficiency or a depletion, and you end up with some new side effect. And so you go back to the doctor. Hey, doc, like it's kind of helping with the symptom, but now I've got these new symptoms or these new side effects. Oh, don't worry about that. We got 2 more pills for that. So now you're on 3 medications. And then guess what? More side effects, more symptoms, whatever it may be. You go back. Before you know it, you're on half a dozen medications. You don't feel better. You might have to go to see several doctors, and they're all telling you that you're going to have to stay on these medications literally for the rest of your life. That's not root causal. That is masking a symptom, because as soon as you stop taking that drug, that symptom's coming. And that's what I'm talking about. If you've got something like that going on, there might be something that will get to the root cause. For me, it was carnivore. You might consider it. So I wanted to pause on that for just a minute. The next one is freedom from fear, because it's a scary thing when you get these symptoms that show up and you can't get them to go away, especially if they tell you that you could die. If it gets to that point, it's very scary. You feel like your body's betraying you, especially when they're telling you you got all these autoimmune conditions and it's basically your body attacking itself. Or sometimes when you're on that, sometimes you'll wake up and it's what they call a flare, like an autoimmune flare, or an inflammatory flare. And you'll wake up and it's just like, oh my God, my symptoms are like level 12 right now on a scale of 1 to 12. They are just going through the roof. And that day is just going to suck. I mean, it's almost like they're just like rolling the dice. Certain days you wake up, the moment you wake up, today gonna suck. Today gonna suck. I couldn't stand that. And you get freedom from that. Again, you feel like you're in control because you've got something that's root causal that will decrease that flame at the source. The next one is freedom from confusion. A lot of times there's diet wars going on, and you're having to count your calories, and you're having to do this, and you're having to do that, and you get online, and there's conflicting information. This guy's saying this thing, and this lady's saying the complete opposite. Like they're not even close. Who's right here? And it gives you freedom from that. I love not having to count calories. That's the best part about carnivore. I literally don't have to count. I don't even know how many. I mean, I eat until I'm full. And when I'm full, I stop eating and I don't eat again until I get hungry again. It's kind of like, I treat it like when I'm tired, I go to sleep. When I'm thirsty, I go get a drink. My body actually does know how to tell me when it's hungry, when it needs calories or nutrients or vitamins or minerals or whatever it needs if I listen to it. And if cravings aren't present, that is key. Hunger is correct, cravings aren't. Okay. So the next one is freedom energy. Whenever you have, the one thing that you'll notice when you're not having the glucose and you're not having the insulin spike, and, whenever that does that, it tells the cells in your body to uptake the glucose. So it'll bring the glucose levels in your blood down. But then that also affects ghrelin and leptin levels, which that's your hunger and your satiety hormones. Man, you're just all over the place. And not only that, your energy levels. If you go eat a high carb meal, think about it. If you're at work, you go to lunch at say 1 or 2 o'clock, and you go get some meal that's got, whether it's got sugar or whether it's got carbs in any form in it. What happens at about 2:30, about 30 minutes to an hour later after you get through eating that lunch? You can barely keep your eyes open. You're over here nodding off. You can't even concentrate. That won't happen on carnivore because you don't have that roller coaster going on. You just got flat, stable energy levels. And it's nice to just like have those. And now you still get tired at the end of the day. I mean, you still have a circadian rhythm. Your body still needs sleep, but you don't have midday roller coasters going on. And the freedom from that is very good. You get freedom of choice. You get to decide how you feel by what you eat. And especially once you've done it and you know that it works, kind of like I have, you'll still, there'll be holidays, there'll be special occasions, there'll be birthdays, there'll be whatever, vacations, where it is going to be harder to stick to the carnivore diet. And at that point, once you know it works, that's the best part about it, is you can then choose. But the nice thing is you always know how to reel that back in. You know how to get to the source of the inflammation. You know how to get right back on that horse and take it back over. For me, usually I stick to the diet pretty good. But, let's say it's something that I haven't had in 2 years and it's like my favorite dessert and it's a special occasion. Sometimes I'll just make the conscious choice to go ahead and break the diet and enjoy that. And I will indulge every single morsel. I won't beat myself up. I have the freedom to still choose to do that. But I know that probably for the next 72 hours, I'm going to pay the price. Okay. That's just how sensitive my body is. And I'll flare up. I'll have weight. I'll probably hold on a whole bunch of inflammatory water retention for the next 3 days. But when you choose that consciously and you know how to get it right back on track, that's still freedom. That's still freedom. And I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, freedom is great. The next one is freedom of mind. You get mental clarity. The brain fog lifts. Listen, that was a huge one for me. I didn't even know I had brain fog. And if you would have told me, man, I think you got brain fog, I would have been like, no, I don't. No, I don't. Until I went carnivore and I noticed the mental clarity and I noticed the focus and I noticed the brain fog lift. And then it was like, oh my God, I had a lot of brain fog, not just a little bit. This is crazy. All of a sudden, it's just you're more creative. You have more aha moments. It's easier to articulate sentences. It's just easier and more fun. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's very powerful whenever you get that freedom of mind and you don't just feel like, your mind is fatigued and you can't recall things and you can't calculate and you can't remember what, you thought you walk into a room and forget why you're even there. There's nothing more frustrating than that. So it gives you that freedom. And then, last but not least is freedom of time. And this is a big one because they underestimate how much time they think about what they're going to eat on a daily basis. And if you don't have that mapped out, then a lot of times you'll experience what's called decision fatigue, where you're trying to decide what I'm going to eat. Oh, what sounds good today, And we've all been there where you're there with your significant other or your friend or whatever, and you're like, hey, what do you want to eat? Oh, I don't care. Where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know. You want to go here? Nah, I don't want that. And then it goes in circles for the next 30 minutes, and before you know it, y'all haven't eaten 30 minutes. You just wasted 30 minutes and a lot of energy. And you're like, you know what? At this point, I don't even like, let's just go to McDonald's. Let's just go over to the fast food joint because now I am hangry and I'm tired of this. And let's just go get something. And before you know it, you're eating the junk food. and you made it was basically an emotional decision. If you had the clarity to choose what you were going to eat beforehand and you had it ready to eat before the craving was on level 10,000, then you wouldn't have fallen off the cliff. You wouldn't have made that choice. You wouldn't regret it. You wouldn't beat yourself up later. You wouldn't have weird, bad symptoms. And it gives you that. So it gives you a bunch of time back, and the other thing is on carnivore, it's usually pretty, it's a simplified meal plan. You don't need all the extra sides. You basically got the main course. That's it. It's very nutritionally dense. It's very satisfying. And like I said, all the fears that I had about it, none of them happened. I was never constipated. I've been doing this diet now for almost 6 years. Not one day have I ever been constipated. In fact, early on, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. And I think it's because your guts, like the microbiome, and your gut, your good bacteria down there, they're going to have to modify a little bit to be able to change the diet, because they're not the ones that need carbs to survive. They're not going to survive. And so sometimes there's some loose stools for the first week or two, but that's just expected. But anyway, guys, that's just a short list of the freedoms that I've experienced. I cannot tell you how powerful this diet was for me. It saved my life. It gave me these freedoms back. I'm back in control now. I have peace of mind. I know I have the kryptonite against this disease. And guess what? I don't have a doctor. I don't have a specialist. I'm not on any anti-inflammatory medications, not even a baby aspirin. Okay. I can't tell you how freeing that feeling is. And trust me, my friends are happy to have their friend back, and my wife is happy to have her husband back. My kids are happy to have their dad back. I got to be who I was before I became this sick individual that was basically just surviving, and praying that it didn't get worse. And every day was just getting darker and harder and heavier. And I don't want to go back to that. Okay. I don't want to go back to that. So I got very desperate, guys. That's why I tried to do this. And it was the secret weapon for me. So if you have any of the symptoms, if that sounds like what you're going through, please reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If it's not you, but it's a loved one or it's a friend or a family member or whatever that is going through something like this, please share this with them so that they can hear this story, because I needed to hear this. I wish someone would have told me this before I wasted a decade of my life before I found it. But guess what? I'm just glad that I finally did find it, and that I am even still standing here today to be able to share this message. Carnivore gave me freedom I didn't even know I lost. Which freedom are you chasing? Drop it in the comment below. I want to know which one of the freedoms I just talked about is the most important for you that you're chasing. And I hope I can help you get there. That's my goal, is to help people who are stuck in the same boat that I was stuck in, and so that they can experience this freedom from that disease that they have been debilitated with. So anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful. That's my story. That's the freedom that you stand to gain from this. Everybody be good for listening to this message today, guys. Like I said, please share this with someone if they need to hear it. And until next time, stay good.